Okay, yeah, probably let's get started. Yeah, good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on your time zone. Welcome to the NSF, National AI Institute TILOS panel discussion on early career development in industry. Well, before we begin the panel discussion, we would like to go over some logistics. Firstly, we kindly ask that our audience keep your microphone muted before the Q&A session to minimize any background noises. Since everyone already agreed on the video recording, so we will do the recording now. Well, in today's panel, we'll focus on the early career development, right? Because in recent years, the field of AI foundation, robotics, chips, networks have experienced tremendous growth. And however, the pandemic and academic downturn has resulted in mass layoffs and even job insecurity for many professionals in these industries. So we are very honored to have such a talented and diverse audience with us today, including graduate students or even postdoc fellows who may be facing those challenges recently. So the goal of this panel is to provide our audience with practical advice and strategies to navigate this difficult job market and achieve their career goals. Well, before that, a quick introduction to TILOS. TILOS is the NSF-funded National AI Institute for Learning-Enabled Optimization at Scale. Well, at TILOS, we would like to pioneer learning-based optimization and transform various important use domains. And we have researchers in AI machine learning, optimization foundation, chip design, robotics, or even communication networks. And also TILOS is a multi-university institute, right? Including UC San Diego, MIT, National University, University of Pennsylvania, UT Austin, and Yale. Well, let me quickly introduce the organizers for today's panel. I'm Jiaqi Gu, a final year PhD candidate from UT Austin. And Karen Zhu is another moderator today, who's a postdoc from UT Austin. And we also have another two organizers, right? Professor David Pan from UT Austin and Professor Andrew Kang from UC San Diego. So yeah, today's agenda is shown on this page, right? So first, we'll quickly introduce the panelists at the beginning, and then we will move on to the main event, right? Which will be organized in the format of a roundtable discussion. Well, at the end, we will have a free discussion session with Q&A. So we encourage you to engage with the panelists by typing your questions or comments in the chat box, and our moderator will be monitoring all the chats and will do their best to address as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. So next, I will then pass the floor to Karen to introduce our panelists.
Yeah, thanks, Jiaqi, for the great introduction. So we have honor to have 5 panelists in today's event. Our first panelist is Dr. Ismail Bustany from AMD. At AMD, Dr. Bustany is a fellow working on physical design implementation and machine learning for computer-aided design. He has been active in surveys and served in the program committee of many conferences in the field, including the very famous DAC and ICCAD. He received his bachelor from UC San Diego and a PhD from the UC Berkeley. Maybe Jiaqi, can you go next? Our second panelist is Anna Goldie. She is currently with Anthropic, working on reinforcement learning for large language model and retrieval augmented LLM. Previously, he was a staff researcher and scientist with Google Brain, where he co-founded and led the machine learning for system team. He received her bachelor degree and master degree from MIT. He's currently doing her PhD at Stanford. Can you go next? Dr. Liangzhen is our third panelist. He is a research scientist at Meta Reality Lab. He worked on the on-device AI acceleration and deployment. Before joining Meta, Dr. Lai was with ARM, working on optimizing the machine learning kernels for ARM MCUs. He received his bachelor from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology and his PhD from UCLA. Next. Our first panelist is Dr. Vahab Mirrokni from Google. He is a Google Fellow and a VP at Google Research. Dr. Mirrokni has led a large number of research in the algorithms and optimization research group at Google. Before he joined Google, he has held research positions at Microsoft, Microsoft Research, MIT, and Amazon. His work has been well recognized in the academia with several Best Paper Awards. He received his bachelor from Sharif University of Technology and his PhD from MIT. Next. Xiaxi?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Our last panelist is Dr. Ruchir Puri from IBM. He is the chief scientist of IBM Research. He is also an IBM fellow and the vice president of IBM Corporate Technology. He led IBM Watson as its CTO and the chief architect in the past, and he has held various technical research and engineering leadership roles across IBM's AI and research business. Outside the IBM, Dr. Puri has also served or was honored with several positions in the chairship, including adjunct professor at Columbia University and the John von Neumann Chair at Bonn University. He has authored many patents and technical papers. Okay, let's switch back to Jiaqi to moderate the main roundtable discussion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Corinne, for introducing our panelists. So to guide today's discussion, we actually prepared 5 to 6 questions for our panelists, and I believe all those questions our audience might be very interesting. So I'll go through those questions one by one, and for each question, I will ask panelists to share their insights and perspectives. In terms of the order to answer and comments on those questions, how about we first generally follow the last name alphabetical order, and after question 3, probably we can flip the order. Okay, yeah, for the first question, we'd like to know more about our panelists besides the introduction Corinne just did. So can each of you share with us your educational background and the career paths? Probably Dr. Bustany, maybe you can be the first to share. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so I had my computer science degree from UC San Diego, and then I went on to UC Berkeley. I had a EECS master's and PhD, and there actually I was doing mostly algorithms, and it was a lot of algorithms work and optimization. My advisor was Professor Lucian Pollack, who was maybe some of you know, he's the kind of a godfather of minimax and conjugate gradient and methods and stuff like that. And then while at UC Berkeley, I did research at UC San Francisco, which was basically like cancer treatment, was biomedical applications, and we were solving min-max problems there. And then when I finished, it was the .com boom era, and I got a lot of offers, like very enticing offers, big stock options and all that kind of stuff. But I settled down on a small, tiny company that was co-founded by a professor at Stanford, Professor Stephen Boyd, and purely because I love optimization. So I forego all the stock options and I went for that small company. It was an analog synthesis company, but it was a great decision in my life because I felt like I had yet a second PhD degree. I mean, imagine sitting in a cubicle and right next to you there is Stephen Boyd for a couple of years and just imbuing you with knowledge of modeling optimization. So I felt like I had a lot of theory background in Berkeley, and then I had a lot of modeling of optimization theory from Professor Boyd. And then I hopped on after that startup to another startup, which was an EDA. It was digital, not analog, which was later acquired by Mentor Graphics, spent a long tenure there. And then eventually that was acquired by Siemens. And then I hopped onto Xilinx, and from Xilinx, I've been doing, again, in Mentor Graphics, I was doing placement and routing algorithms and some machine learning, early machine learning work. And then in Xilinx, I did a lot of machine learning work for CAD and some work on placement. And yeah, that's where I am right now. So.
Sorry. Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. Probably next one, Anna. We know your career path is quite special among the panelists. Can you share your story with us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think my background's a bit unusual here. I think I'm a natural language processing and machine learning person, primarily. I studied computer science and linguistics at MIT. I did research on natural language processing and dialogue systems there. I spent 9 years in Google Research, working on machine learning, and I did a variety of different research like question answering, machine translation, dialogue systems. And about 4 years ago, Azalea and I co-founded the Machine Learning for Systems team at Google Brain. We worked on a variety of deep learning and reinforcement learning approaches to problems in computer systems, like, for example, large-scale model parallelism, and also chip floor planning and computer architecture co-optimization of hardware with machine learning models and compilers. And I think that's a really exciting area. But I think what's also very exciting is seeing the impact of large-scale compute and advances in deep learning algorithms and reinforcement learning on these generative AI models like ChatGPT, Claude, Anthropic's Claude, Google Bard, and it's really interesting to see like that these models are actually becoming so capable that they could potentially have business value. And about 9 months ago, I joined Anthropic, where I'm working on reinforcement learning approaches to improving these models and augmenting them with search capabilities. And yeah, that's where I am now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you very much. And Dr. Lai, yeah, it's your turn.
Thanks. Yeah, so for myself, like kind of I grew up in the mainland China and then attending my undergrad in Hong Kong and then coming to US for PhD in UCLA. My advisor was Professor Puni Gupta, and my PhD was mostly around kind of EDA and then like chip variability and variability handling. After my PhD, I joined ARM and then kind of initially started working on kind of also similar as my PhD topic about reliabilities and kind of in IP and chip design there. Then becomes this new ML and AI wave of things coming. So that's why I also switched to kind of how do we assess rating machine learning, especially for the kind of on-device and edge. That's why how I kind of start writing and developing certain machine learning kernels for ARM's codecs and MCUs. After that, I joined back then Facebook, now Meta, kind of part of the ARV organization, and starting working on this conjunction between AI applications for AR/VR. How do we accelerate them, including hardware accelerators, software? How do we build up the software deployment flows there? Yeah, that's kind of like my backgrounds and career path. Yeah.
Great, wonderful. Dr. Mirrokni, can you share your stories with the audience?
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I grew up in Iran, like doing my bachelor's also like in Sharif University in Tehran. I did informatics Olympiad, RoboCup, some robotics there, and also like ACM programming. I was fascinated with both topics, but I decided to do my PhD in algorithm and optimization. I went to MIT to do like PhD in theory of computation group with Michel Gomans and like David Karger and that crowd. So I did approximation algorithms and also algorithmic game theory, like a little bit of interplay between game theory and optimization. Then I joined Amazon optimization team, optimizing the backend of their fulfillment centers, and then moved to Microsoft Research for a couple of years, like working on like large scale graph-based algorithms a little bit, and also as advertising auctions. When I moved to Google 14 years ago, it was like Google was an established company, but not as established as other research centers perhaps at the time. But then it was the best decision of my life, like academically, like career-wise. So we formed like an algorithm optimization team in New York. We work in like 3 major areas. One is large-scale graph-based learning algorithms, including like graph mining, like clustering, and dealing with large networks, large graphs, trillions of edges, like handling them reliably for the rest of Google. It's like used for hundreds of projects, and it's been a very fruitful journey. The second part of my team works on optimizing back end of Google advertising systems in the auction side, in the bidding side, the optimization problems like that's related to bidding automation. So that's where we also like make big impact at Google, like in terms of monetary impact, and also keeping advertisers and users happy with the advertising systems. And the third element is like large scale optimization, where we develop large scale optimization tools. Like we have a large scale like linear programming solver that can handle very big linear programs. And yeah, also like apply these things for the back end of machine learning infrastructure at Google, and also some like backend of search and other like the Google infrastructure itself. So I'll be able to hopefully talk to you about those things over the panel. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, wonderful. Dr. Puri, we would like to hear about your career path.
Sure. I think mine is fairly simple, relatively speaking. I did my sort of initial studies at Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and in India, and then did my PhD in computer engineering from Alberta, Canada, and joined IBM Research. And that's the only job, if I call it a job, I have known. I don't call it a job because I get paid to have fun. And I've had various roles, pretty much, I think, at every level of the stack you can think about. Radiating chips in the basement of Yorktown Heights, New York, with alpha particles to analyze their behavior, to FinFETs, to 3D ICs, to computer architecture, including deep learning architectures with analog design, to workload acceleration with GPUs, to AI as a CTO of Watson, to more recently, I've been working on AI to write code of both kind, code of every kind, I would say, from COBOL to translating COBOL to more recently to ID automation. And my current passion is also on AI to be able to write our lovely code VHDL and Verilog. So I'm lucky to have spanned pretty much the whole spectrum you can think about, including having engineering leadership roles as a chief scientist of IBM, and sort of looking after our entire technical population, if I may say, which is around 127,000 strong. So that's my current role.
Yeah, thank you.
I've never left my technical soul, which I never will, actually. Every job I can leave, but not that one.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you all for sharing your very inspiring career paths. And our second question actually targets senior graduate students and postdoc fellows who will be on the job market very soon, right? And actually, most of them, at least from TLOS, are in the field of machine learning optimization foundation, semiconductor, robotics, networks. Well, in this year, the job market is actually quite challenging. So the question is, what are the current status and future trends of the industrial job market? So I think this question might be the one the audience concerns the most about, right? And especially you can talk about the fields in AI, chips, AR, VR, etc. Yeah. And Dr. Bustany, how do you see the current status and the future trend in the job market?
Yeah, so at least from my vantage point, I mean, I live in the Bay Area. I know there's like a lot of noise about layoffs and things like that. I mean, I had some of my colleagues and other companies also had some issues, but soon enough they are able to find jobs. So I don't think that it's as the news make it sound. But I think the trends, at least from my vantage point, again, is I think if you're in the AI field, if you're in research, if you're in optimization, it's actually a very solid future ahead of you. There are many, as we know, AI has been an inflection point lately, and many panelists here will attest to that. But also, I think in the health sciences, like in human genome projects, for instance, there's a huge untapped or starting to be tapped opportunity there, where computationally intensive kernels need to be accelerated, and large swaths of data in the tens of petabytes need to be analyzed, stored, again accelerated and analyzed. So I think if you're in MLCAT, if you're in AI field, I think that there's a lot of opportunities out there for you. I wouldn't be too much concerned about what you hear in the news. That's just my from where I'm sitting at, and I'll let the other panelists take it from here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi, Anna. How do you comment on this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that if you're working in AI, there's a lot of opportunities. Like, for example, it was so disturbing to hear about like tens of thousands of people being laid off, or hearing about people being laid off at Google, but like pretty much like no one at Google Brain was affected. So I think if you're working on these high impact areas that are really promising, like AI, yeah, for chip design, EDA, I think you're much more likely to get through this unscathed.
Yeah, right. Especially you mentioned you're working on some large language model probably. How do you think this like ChatGPT or Google Bard thing impact the job market overall?
I mean, for example, like I work for Anthropic. We have a rival chatbot called Claude, which is like on par with ChatGPT in terms of its ability to converse. And we're hiring still. You know, Character AI just raised, I think they're just valued at $1 billion. They're hiring. Like there's this rise of these generative AI startups that are absolutely still hiring, and hardware is an important component of like that powers these systems.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Right, Dr. Lai. Yeah, I know you are the tech lead in the system architecture team, and actually interned in your team before. So you're indeed managing some young talents in AI hardware accelerator. So recently there are actually some news like rumoring about possible layoffs, especially at Meta Reality Lab. So how can you comment on this? Share your insight.
Probably wouldn't comment on like the company just in this public forums anyway. But I think I kind of like agree with the previous panels about hey, they are actually exciting new fields, especially around AIs and especially generative AI that we're seeing. The industry is just kind of like starting there, and there will be a lot of opportunities. But at the same time, right, the reason that we have this question is also because of just macroeconomics and the overall job market is older than earlier for sure. I mean, it's kind of like everyone can feel that there, but just like the overall we see probably like it's kind of like the overall job market maybe not as good, but specific fields, especially emerging fields, they're probably still very active and even much better than earlier just because of this new recent kind of breakthrough in terms of generative AI. Is a lot of AI based.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, right. Dr. Mirrokni, yeah, can you how do you look at the recent job market and their like future trend?
I guess I plus one what is being said. Generally, computer science and AI is like flourishing. In terms of like layoffs and like what's happened recently, I think my comment is it is true that like the hiring that some of the big companies, tech companies did in 2021 maybe like was not based on the right predictions and so on. And the reason to see like this some of the layoffs is related to like overhiring for a number of companies in 2021. So I wouldn't panic. Like when I went to the job market again in 2008, there was a real recession. And yeah, like that made me like move to like maybe not like the biggest research center at the time, 2008, Google was still, yeah. And this was actually much better for me, like career-wise. So the positive side is there is a lot of new activities going on, new areas. If you are open-minded and you also take some risk, it may get paid, yeah, like it can have like long-term return of investment. Also, yeah, like maybe for a couple of like for a year or two, there is a chance that like you may go to a postdoc, to a temporary position. That's also acceptable, and like and you can learn something new, as like we heard from like the first panelist. Like sometimes you join like a smaller effort, and like you learn much more, and then you get ready to move do the next move. So it's the most exciting area in the technology, like computer science, AI. So just be positive, and yeah, like also maybe be open-minded to look at like new areas. So we'll talk about most probably large language models and like what is being observed, and the things that we don't understand like really, and like understanding them better will help us improve. So there's a lot more to understand for this new area, and like we'll discuss more about that. So it's all positive in that sense.
Yeah, sure, great. Yeah, Dr. Puri, do you want to share with us your perspective on the job market and trend?
Sure. First of all, as I said earlier, I've been at a company for 27, almost 28 years now, which is 111 plus years old. You can imagine being 111 years old in a technology field that is evolving on a daily basis. I think the company has seen ups and downs, many of them. And still, if you picked up more recent issue of Time magazine, you will find something that is from IBM actually. So I think one thing I would tell everyone will be, have a long-term perspective. It's critically important. And sometimes we lose that being in the Silicon Valley, because there is a lot of things that are going on. And of course, it is a very vibrant ecosystem, I think benefiting our nation and the world overall, but just have a long-term perspective. I think the second one I would like to share will be, love what you do. In the end, you can always fall back upon sandwiches and happiness. Just love what you do, because I don't think there is any substitute for, like if you are off for money, then I would say there is if you love what you do, then I think first of all, it will show up in your work. Second, your energy and your passion shows up to everyone, which is you are less likely to get crunched if it was performance-based. Many times it is not. So just to be fair, I do understand, and unfortunately, I've been in situations to make decisions like that. And the third one I would say will be, I think, be flexible. It was already said as well. You are an engineer. In fact, if many of you are either already PhDs or PhD students, it's called a doctorate in philosophy. It's not called doctorate in electrical engineering. It's not called doctorate in computer science. It's called doctorate in philosophy, which doesn't mean you should philosophize. It means actually there is a way of thinking. You have a deeper way of thinking than a normal subject. It is not just about a subject, it's about problem solving, a way of approaching the problem. And if you keep that fundamental perspective, I think you will be fine overall. And I totally sympathize, and I'm very sympathetic to the people who are caught in this downturn. But I can certainly only vouch for experience that I've been in situations where we had to make decisions, but in the long run, it happened to be good for the people who were technically good. So just have that longer term perspective, you will be fine. I certainly understand people who are going through the pain. Absolutely, I do. But I do believe, I think if you adhere to those three principles, it'll be all right.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for sharing your 3 points. Yeah. The third question is actually for those who just get their job or offer and get started in the early stage. But in this period, I believe a lot of people are actually very worried about probably job security, promotion opportunities, how to do like team transfer, or which one to choose, startups or tech giants. So what are your suggestions on the strategy to develop an early career path during this period of mass layoffs? Yeah. Dr. Bustany, any suggestions for the audience to start their early careers?
Yeah, so I mean, I can harken back to my decisions when I was graduating. So when I was graduating, I actually thought I was going to go and teach, and I almost accepted a teaching job, research job in the university. But then when I saw this, when I met Professor Stephen Boyd, I just quickly switched my career path. But in this period, I would think, and you're all young, in this audience, the students. So take risks. The best time of your life is now, and I would honestly jump at startups. Many of the great startups starts in periods of calamities, especially like now. And if you look at the landscape, I see many folks starting small businesses. I mean, startups in our area. And the good thing about startups is, yeah, you don't have a mentor, big mentor from big companies and stuff like that, and maybe that established career path. But if you jump on a startup, you get a lot of experience, a lot of responsibilities, and you start at a higher level than you would start at a big company. I mean, you start as an MTS, member of technical staff, which will very quickly catapult you to the next level if you want to, after a few years, switch career paths from a startup to a bigger company. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and there are many of the startups in the Bay Area or New York and Austin, Boston. They've been hungry for talent, and because we have such a great economy and the big companies, the superscalers were paying a lot of money for folks to join them. A lot of the talent was kind of starving the ecosystem of startups from it. So my advice to you is, either you think if you have a great idea, maybe partner with somebody, go to an incubator and grow your idea, or if you know colleagues, or if you don't, maybe some of us in the panelists can point you to folks who have startups that we know, and maybe we can connect you. But I would say just use the startup ecosystem in this period. That's my quick advice on this.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. And Anna, do you want to share some of your strategy to start the early career? Especially, can you share your thoughts on the pros and cons and startup versus tech giant?
I agree that right now seems like a very exciting time to join startups. Like there's this Anthropic, Character AI, Inflection AI. They're all raised as Meta, Google, like Amazon are laying off tens of thousands of people. These startups are raising hundreds of millions of dollars and are actively hiring. So I agree that seems like a good opportunity. But sort of regardless of what company you join or what area you're working on, I think an important thing, especially during a time of mass layoffs, is to focus on working on areas that provide huge benefit to the company, that are critical to the success and future of the company. And also, early in your career, I think it's okay and good to work really, really hard, because that's an investment in your future and it will pay off.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Right, Dr. Lai, what's your suggested strategy to start the early career?
Yeah, my suggestion for this environment would be just grasp whatever opportunities you have, because if you look at fresh PhD graduate at this moment, there's a few decades of career in front, and don't be worried about making some non-optimal options, because you never know whether things are optimal or not, these decisions at the early stages. So I would say, kind of have more like other panelists saying, have a more long-term view of it, where, if you get the opportunity, try to be in it, learn from it, experience from it, and that's how all we grow from it there. And in terms of startup versus big corps, and I guess it's probably also down to what other panelists earlier saying, they're really kind of try to learn yourself in terms of what are the job types or career that really make you happy and that fits you the best. And then maybe through all these different trials, and you have also kind of get to learn more about what kind of work or job that you're mostly interested in.
Yeah, right. So besides the startup versus tech giants, sometimes people also worry about their promotion opportunity, whether this process gets freeze or something. Yeah. Right.
I mean, I just add on that one again. Maybe just look at it a little bit longer horizon in terms of it's just not just enough. You're not just only working for 5 years, 10 years, like a few decades in front of you. Especially for young PhD graduate, and then just optimize that. Don't optimize your loss for the first 10 training epochs. Look at end of the training epochs. What will be that there?
Yeah, great. Yeah. Right, Dr. Mirrokni, it was your suggestion for those who just get started in their early career.
Yeah, I think maybe one advice is build a portfolio of like broader expertise a little bit. Like don't focus only maybe like make sure that like whatever team you join, you can bring like a big marginal value, and as Anna said, like you can deliver well for the purpose of that company, like or like the group that you're with. So like what is your competence? Make sure that you can contribute in that area. Also learn about new emerging areas and like see where you can contribute in those areas. So that's like another piece that like there is a chance that like in a couple of years more and more like new trends show up that in terms of like if you're doing optimization, if you're doing system like optimization, if you're doing like ML like theory, like algorithm theory, like in each of these areas there are like some new horizons that may open up due to like the new technologies and the new techniques that are being developed. And most of them are very much empirical, and like if you also learn a little bit about how they are done, like you can go and like also start like playing with them and understand them more. So like have an eye on the new trends, but like also know your competence and work on like the area that gives you like the edge in your early career, because you want to show like that you are you can contribute to the area. I think the other big thing that's like maybe we can make conscious decisions at times is try to join competent and strong teams. Make sure to like make connections or like join efforts that have more like strong technical people working with you. Your collaborators will form like what you know and what you achieve and what you can do in the future. Like a lot you can learn from your collaborators at this stage of your career as well. So that's also very important. Like don't hesitate to like go and work with a strong set of people, because you may not be able to show your like find your niche competence and then work with the strong area like collaborators. So together you can achieve much more. Maybe that's also.
Thank you. Right, that's a very interesting point actually. Yeah. Dr. Puri, do you want to give us some suggestions to plan for the early career?
Sure. So I think with the coming out of just grad school, you will be immediately faced with a binary choice, almost. You go for a startup or you go for established tech companies. Third one, obviously, academia as well. So you have a three-way choice to make. I definitely believe for really young people, sandwiches are good options. And in general, I would say startups provide an invaluable experience, especially in an environment where we are in. I think earlier it was said as well, where large companies are constraining, startups are certainly thriving, and have a practical perspective as well. When you go to a startup, don't go from the point of view, I have these options, I'm going to make money. Don't keep money as a driver at all, actually, because if you are all mathematics students, so you know statistics fairly well. Just look at them. Go because you love it. Don't go because somehow there is a financial reward in it for it, because that valuable in my mind is more I think precious than any financial reward you will get, and every organization later on in your journey will value that. That's first one. If you happen to join a established tech player, I would say you would have, in the first choice, failure is not an option, I would say. It's almost like if you fail, then you're kind of out of that business. So failure is not an option. It's not like you can take risk and, I'll fail, that'll be okay. In the second one, failure, risk becomes more tolerant, if I may say it that way. These are established large tech companies which have large groups which are really pushing boundaries as well. In that case, I would suggest that you take a sort of almost, I call it, you have a main boat, which is where I think it was said earlier, align that with the main direction of the company, which is where the company makes money, whether it is in Google search or IBM's computing or wherever it might be. Actually, this is like, if you don't, and the second boat should be, think of it as almost like a parallel boat, which is a risky boat, where you are pushing boundaries that if you are successful in that, then it'll be phenomenal. That'll give you another run for next 5 years or 7 years as well. But always have a risky boat along with you too. And if the risky boat somehow doesn't work out, you have your main boat, which is, okay, this is the mainline business of the company. Nobody will fault you ever for working on the mainline business of the company. So always have this sort of balanced strategy if you happen to go to a tech player. And I won't academia is very clear and self-explanatory in itself. Tenure is always in established institutes and top of the line institutes hard. So your path will be fairly well defined, but at least this is how I think about sort of three-way choices you're going to face. I think my personal opinion, you're young, you're energetic, take risk, do startups that experience will be invaluable. And established tech players are a great choice too. You can always make it in any order. Actually, you can do it out of order anytime. Not a problem.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you for sharing your perspectives. And our first question is more for junior or younger Hilo students. They're actually doing their master or PhD in graduate school. So I believe they still have quite some time to prepare ahead. For example, taking more courses, doing internships, build their networks, or practice leaderships. So the question is, how should those junior students prepare for their future career while still in the graduate program? And from this question, probably we can flip the order in another direction. And let's start from Dr. Puri. Yeah, anything that you want to suggest the junior student to pay special attention to and start preparing?
I think from one thing that is becoming increasingly clear, I call it 3 Qs actually. It's clear when you come out of school, you will have IQ. I assume that will be true actually. Okay, that's a given. I would say, and this is certainly emphasized a lot in US education system, what I'll call EQ. It's pretty much from you are a elementary school students in reasonable schools onwards, that is emphasized a whole lot. And which is the benefit, I truly believe is the benefit of sort of early education in United States. I would say the rest of the world, including Asia, emphasizes sort of really STEM disciplines very well, and that is their benefit. So have this emphasis on what I'll describe as EQ, and the third Q I call it as a RQ, which is EQ is emotional quotient and RQ is relationship quotient. And I think though the later 2 Qs will help you tremendously to sort of exponentiate your IQ. And just get prepared for that, because the real world is more about not just about your IQ, because you may be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't work in a team, it's not going to go well actually, unless you really are a patent clerk in Zurich, at some point in time that you're going to make the entire humanity better. We bow to you and you're going to make our lives better, but there are very few of those. So I would really say focus a lot on the EQ and the RQ. In addition to, I'm just assuming the IQ is given, you are doing the training, you're doing all the academic stuff that you need to do. But one thing just double down upon is the soft aspects of your personality, because that will go the longest way and will exponentiate your IQ. If it is not, you are going to struggle in any organization, I would say, startup, established tech, or academia. All three value this tremendously. And we don't emphasize this enough. You only realize this through experience later in life. But just that's the main advice I'll give to people who are starting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And Dr. Mirrokni, do you want to share some suggestions with the audience?
Yeah, thank you. I think as a graduate student or like a master student, first thing is to learn the courses that you're taking like well deeply, and yeah, like learn it for like long term. Try to understand them, like what is behind the like output of an algorithm, like not only like mechanically but also yeah like conceptually. So then learn at least one topic through doing some research, like cutting edge research, trying to write a paper, understand the state of the art on the paper by reading other papers and doing experiments, like do it sooner than later, at least on one topic. You can do like a summer internship or like summer program to do that. That helps a lot. I mean, I would say like even like during the year, like you should have one research project at any time. I guess the other important thing that is related to what Dr. Puri was saying is networking is also very important during graduate school, like especially when you go to conferences, talk to other people, make yourself, you know, recognized, like known by others. Don't shy away from making comments at talks, and so on and so forth. So like this is like one, after like 2 years of my like PhD, someone like came and talked to me about like yeah like my research and so on, and like I asked her for like an advice, and like this was the advice that she gave me, and this like helped me very well like during my career. I learned that okay, like you have to be proactive in making connections, and yeah, it's related to the RQ component. It's like you will need to build relations and keep them over your career. That's
Yeah, great. Probably we have a small extra question for you. Actually, some students are actually working on very theoretical topics, right? Or like mathematics, or theoretical machine learning, or some very emerging topics. So there might be some big gap between the academic research and industrial practice. So how could those students prepare and deal with this gap?
I guess there are two ideas, ways to improve on that. Number one is like try to do something more empirical related to the theoretical research that you do. Like if you write a theory paper, if you develop a new algorithm, also implement it, add a simulation, basically section, and like implement it yourself. This is a question that I ask some folks, like when they do theory, like do you get your hands dirty or not? Then the other thing is be open to maybe like do an internship in which like there are like, especially in big companies, it's possible to go like to a research team and work with the research team on like your theory area, but at the same time push your host to find like a more practically relevant project and like work on that as well when you're like connected to like an industrial lab, for example. Because I know, like, for example, theory students, I work a lot, and my team is like a lot active in theoretical computer science, publishing in Fox, Soda, like our Neurips, and in the theory area. But even for our interns, we always try to come up with one practical, one hybrid engineering and research like project that they can do and either write a paper about or at least learn about the system. So these are the two ideas.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And Dr. Lai, what do you think about the most important things that junior students should prepare for their future career?
Yeah, I think the suggestion from previous two panelists are very well, like, focus on a lot non-IQ part, but other sort of like non-technical side of it. But I just want to add the two small things that I think also would be helpful. One is also kind of focus on kind of developing your skills, right? Regardless whether you're doing theoretical research, you're doing more practical research. While you're doing all this, you need to develop skills about how you think about problems, approaching problems, different other skills about how do you, even just soft skills about how do you collaborate with other people, and just focus on that, because that is more transferable to different subjects, different topics. If later in your career you work on something different, and those skills are still with you and kind of be mindful about developing those. The other is also school town is a very special town where you actually get a lot more opportunity to learn a lot of stuff, not just the work and tasks that you're working on. And then just try to use the opportunities to be open-minded, to learn more stuff that's outside of your main research topics. And in a kind of long career path, you never know. A lot of things that you're learning, you are kind of exploring there could be beneficial later.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, soft skills and open-minded are actually very important. And Anna, what's your suggestion for junior students to prepare them for future career?
I agree with the previous panelists on many points. I think tactically, if you had to pick one thing, I would say doing internships in industry during your master's or PhD is going to help a lot. Not only will it ground your coursework, the theoretical concepts will have something to attach to, but directly you will gain industry experience. You will make connections, deep connections and collaborations with people in industry, and it can directly lead to a return offer. I think a more extreme version of this is, I don't know if you guys are all aware of residency programs. So for example, you wanted to transition into a career in AI research. Many companies like Anthropic, Google, Meta, OpenAI have 6 months, 1 year residency programs where people who are not AI PhD students can maybe they're from biology or physics or hardware, can transition into being AI researchers if that's something they're interested in. So that could also be a good opportunity.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you indeed mentioned a very important opportunity for the residence program. And Dr. Bustany, do you have more suggestions for the junior students?
I think the panelists did a great, covered almost everything. But I'll just re-emphasize one point. I think Dr. Puri mentioned fundamentals. You're in grad school. That's the time where you have a lot of time on your hand to really know a subject. And if you can be an expert in that one particular subject, that will return dividends to you later on in life, because you'll be the expert in that area. That, and also obviously take something that's practical. Take some programming classes in AI. Take something from Udemy or those practical classes that they offer online. That will be very useful. And then, like what the panelists mentioned, internships and relationships, like what Anna mentioned. That's very, very valuable, because it also helps link your research with something that's practical. And when you go back to school, you know what classes to take that will help you that will be relevant for industry.
Yeah, great. Well, it's time to move to the next question. We know you are all very successful and doing fantastic jobs in your own career. But let's say if there is a chance for you to look back as a junior graduate student again, what do you know now that you wish you had known during school and early in your career? Yeah, Dr. Puri, do you want to share your insights when you look back?
Yeah, that's an interesting one and a tough one too. I would certainly say I'll be a lot more cognizant of, when things, it's almost related to actually working in teams, where somebody didn't agree with me, or it wasn't the path I was looking for. I would put myself in their shoes and see why are they thinking like that. I think I was too naive and too young to almost think of it as adversarial in many times, I would say. It didn't go my way. There is no, it's almost a binary, my way or the other way. It wasn't that way ever. I think when they are saying something, just put yourself in their shoes, actually. And I think this relates to EQ as well. And you get only that maturity later on. Regarding people have perspectives, those perspectives comes from the background and the journeys they have had. It's not because they are against you in any way, actually. It's just this was their journey and you have had your journey, and their perspective is from their journey. And just, I think if I would have known, I would have had less agony in certain situations than I actually happened to have. And I only realized that a decade later that, well, I think I could have done that better in that situation had I put myself in their shoes on why were they thinking like that. So I think that will be the main one, I would say, and that's more related to working in teams. Obviously, there are many things I can say regarding backgrounds and others. I think focusing on the fundamentals from just a technical point of view is another one. Like I think it was just mentioned as well, be rock solid in your technicals. That's something you can always lean back upon. And at least I, to the best of my abilities, I try to make sure of that, because that's your technical soul. You can leave everything else, but not your soul, actually. So.
Yeah, great. And Dr. Mirrokni, what are the things that you wish you had known, or what are the important decisions or choices planned in your career?
Yeah, okay. So early career, important decisions. I think I wish I knew that. Okay, like let me put it another way. So throughout my career, I was fascinated more by areas that I understand better mathematically, deeply, and like I can make sense of it. I can say that the area of like the deep learning in particular, early in my career, I took a course. I realized it's all like engineering. So we don't understand why this happens, why that happens as much as I wish I could. So what happened was that I didn't pay enough attention to that area at the beginning of my career. So and what I learned at the very beginning of my career, I know very, very well. Like I know much better those areas than like the like areas that I learned later. I mean, like you should always be open to learn new areas, but there is something like deeper in what I learned earlier in my career. So I mean, maybe like the point here is that, yeah, if I knew that something like transformers show up in deep learning and they do this magic that they're doing now, I would have tried to understand them earlier. The good news for the new folks is that these new things that now show up, I can tell you that like not many people or nobody maybe really understands what is like like there are like really a lot of magic that happens in the process that is not well understood. So I wish I knew more about that area so I can jump in and understand them better. But it's not late for anyone to enter this and yeah, like maybe the parallel I heard was like similar to quantum physics that like started 100 years ago, and like there were some phenomena that we didn't understand why it's happening, and it's similar. Like there are similarities. There are like things that we see that if we train the network like this and that, we get this much better outcome, but nobody knows why. Like really, there. So if I knew more, I would have maybe put more of my attention in that area so I can jump in that area faster. But I'm like now like putting like 10% of my time understanding like deeper like these areas so I can help like in a deeper way. But yeah, the good news for the graduate students is that it's the early days for everyone. Like you can be like an expert after a year, yeah, like similar to any like established researcher, I would say. The number 2 area is like, I guess everyone emphasized soft skills. Like one specific soft skill that I learned a little bit after like a couple of years in my career was that relations to your peers is also very important. Like you can always build good relations and manage your team, like incentivize them, give like I had a easier time doing that. Sometimes like when you want to build, also as you establish more in your career, understanding how you form like relations with your peers in a way that they value you, and yeah, like you can collaborate more effectively is like important. So also understand like the incentives or perspectives of like your peers and like try to find middle ground sometimes. So that's another thing that I learned over time, I guess. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for the your perspective. Dr. Lai, any important things to know or important decisions you wish you had made when you look back?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting question. Maybe just take it a little bit more of just my personal view. that, if I am giving a advice to myself, like 5-10 years ago, I honestly don't know what kind of advice I would give, because a lot of things you only realize or kind of understand, appreciate it after you experience it, right? In the sense that, whether it's conflict resolution, if it's how to work in a team, kind of like, at least for myself, I even I'm telling myself earlier that 10 years ago that you should focus on something, I wouldn't have the understanding of back then. I would just treat it as among another 10, 20 other advices that I hear, receive from different people. At least for myself, I feel that a lot of times you have to really experience to learn from it. That's why I don't really have a kind of top advice there. But on the other hand, I think like something that sticks to me is that more of a self-awareness of, throughout this one, don't be afraid of making non-optimal solution or decision back then, but more focus on what kind of learnings and experience from it. And there might be no bad decisions, just, because whether it's joining this company or that company or doing this work versus that work, eventually they may converge the same thing, but just don't be too worried or too concerned about making a decision, especially early in your career, because it'll be a long career for most people, and eventually things will converge in a good way as long as you start building and always have a passion to move forward there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for your answer. Anna, do you have something you would like to share?
Yes. I think the one thing I underestimated when I was still in school was the power of collaboration. So like, for example, at MIT, there's so many brilliant people, but at least back when I was in school, people kind of worked in isolation. They had their own project that they were pushing forward, and they would, do great work. But I think what I realized after joining industry, joining places like Google Brain, Anthropic, where people like collaborate very closely with each other, is that, if brilliant people like work closely together, it's way more, the result is way more than the sum of the parts. Like, it's multiplicative, and you can do things that would otherwise be impossible. So, and I also think it's much more fun. I think as an individual person working, you learn more, you grow faster. And so I just think that that's really important, to surround yourself with brilliant people and actually work closely with them.
Yeah, thank you. Great. And Dr. Bustany, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, so this is just my personal thing. So when I was at grad school, maybe that's also my upbringing, I was a purist, and my advisor was a theorist. And he shied away from, like, when we make an algorithm, we have a template. It had to be very, very general. And I kind of stuck to that mantra. My first job after graduate school was, like I said, with this analog synthesis startup. It was Stephen Boyd. And Stephen Boyd was all about exploiting structure. Don't look at generality. Look at the particular problem and exploit it to the nth optimal degree. And in life, later on, what I found out really is having a template, kind of a template algorithm that's generic and general, is really great, which grounds you in fundamentals of the theory. But you need to have an open mind when you are practicing as an optimization practitioner. You really have to understand your problem and model it and exploit the structure, because that's where you get the benefits, the performance, the acceleration, and the innovation where it happens. So I would say, while you're in grad school and your advisors may be very well intentioned, just be aware of research biases. Like, because their training, like my advisor training, was always like the Russian school of math, or and everything has to be very, very theoretical, grounded, and don't even go to the particularity of the problem, because then you will spoil the generalizability of the algorithm. So I would say just have an open mind. And I luckily, when I was in school, I did venture out, and like I took a lot of classes that were practical, just because I had this passion for it. And maybe I should have done more of that. But luckily, when I finished school, I happened on this other startup that forced me to look on the problem structure more than just the general problem. So I guess just be aware of research biases. That's really my advice.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your advice. Okay, yeah. Finally, let's move to the last question. What's your like very short 1 minute or even one sentence advice or suggestion for the audience, either specific or general? Okay, yeah. Starting from like Dr. Puri. Yeah.
Yeah, so the one thing I always say in various forums is, and it starts actually, it's from Hindu mythology in it's a saying in Sanskrit, so I'm going to say it and then translate as well. It actually says karmanya vadikaraste ma phaleshu gadashna, which actually translates in English as focus on your work, don't worry about anything else, don't worry about the results. Actually, it says. Now that doesn't mean to say you shouldn't get motivated by the results. It just says if you're worrying about other things too much, that means you're not focusing enough. So I think to me, key in anything is focus. Decide what you're going to do and focus. Don't worry about other things. Yeah, things are going to happen. And that's, I think many people here have said similar things as well, which converge to a focus and execution. And there are many dimensions to it. But I adhere by it. Some of the people, including David here, know it. So.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for your advice. Dr. Mirrokni, yeah, any advice for the audience?
Yeah, I guess to summarize, it's important, yeah, like like one area very well, like be competent at each moment of your career, and like find projects that you can show that. At the same time, yeah, have an open mind to learn about other areas and find ways that you can contribute. Maybe you need to go out of your comfort zone in that sense, but for a better, yeah, like outcome, collaborate with good people. That's another big advice.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Dr. Lai, yeah, any advice for the audience?
If you want to give that, it's like kind of try to understand what motivates you, what's important to you, to just other than accomplish things, getting earning good money, and also focus on like what makes you happy in the end of the day, and then also identify your kind of career and personal goals and try to work with it, work towards that. The other, you just don't over worry about short-term things, and always have a long horizon view about what's your end goals and career goals there.
Great, yeah, for the long-term goals, right? Anna, what's your like advice for the audience?
I think first and foremost, focus on solving problems that really matter, and then your efforts will not be in vain. And get as close to the problem as you can. So, for example, if you want to do chip floor planning, spend like an hour a week meeting with the TPU team, getting their feedback for years, so that you understand what they actually need from you, and work with people that you respect and who respect you, and invest in yourself. Don't be afraid to try new areas. Don't think of yourself as, oh, I have a background in X, so that means that I can't work on Y. Think I can learn new things. I can learn from other people and make contributions in other fields. If that's what helped the world, yeah.
Great, yeah. Dr. Bustany, any one sentence last advice for our audience?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I tell my kids. So first of all, follow your passions in life, which I'm repeating what the panelists said. Don't listen to naysayers. At work, you will have even your managers they said, no, this is not going to work. Don't pursue it. I know I've done this in my previous job. It failed. If you believe in it strongly and you think you have something different than what they are saying, pursue it. Even pursue it at your own time. Some of you in the audience, I've worked with some of the students. We did things in the weekends at night, right? So pursue it, and if you really believe in it, don't listen to naysayers, because eventually the truth will show up. If you have something you really believe in, I think it will speak for itself. And then always in life, you may get opportunities and lucrative jobs, lucrative offers. Weigh them by the scale of how much knowledge you'll gain from that. So I would say between two jobs, the one that offers you more knowledge growth, I would favor that over the other one, because in the long run, this is the one that's going to carry your career further. And then my favorite 3 Ps, my companions in life, it's persistence, perseverance, and patience. Persist, and if it doesn't work, persevere, and if it doesn't even work, be patient. Give it all the patience it takes until you get there. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for your great suggestions. Yeah, thanks all for sharing your great insights and experience. Then we want to allocate more time for the audience to interact with the panelists in the Q&A session. So I will just pass the floor to Corinne to moderate our free discussion part.
Yes, thanks for Jiaqi for moderating the roundtable. So for this session, we are more interested in try to invite the audience to raise some of the questions to the panelists. So for the panelists, you are free to join the chat. So if any audience have some question, please feel free to type in the chat box or raise your hand and mute yourself. Great. Okay, we have one question from Zixuan Jiang. His question is that what do you think of the difference between research, engineering, development, product design, and the market analysis? How do we allocate our efforts in these areas? I think that his question is more because when we're doing PhD, it's more on the solely working on the technical part. So how about the other important things in the working environment?
Maybe I can just take a crack at it very quickly, having done majority of these roles in one form or another. I usually say it actually that as you mature in your career, the other aspects here that are mentioned as market analysis, product design, engineering becomes more and more critical. In the beginning, it'll be a lot technical, actually. You're working on a technique, you're working on a software, it'll be very technical. You are known by that really sort of the core technical part you have. But as you go up in the journey, and I'll give examples. Since the company I work for, let's say IBM was working on a technology. If we didn't have what is called as go-to-market, it may be a brilliant technology. Like it'll never be successful because we don't have the channel to the market, actually. And you don't have the brand permission. You know, everyone would argue healthcare was one of those areas. It's not that it was not a noble goal. It's certainly a noble goal. And we certainly have the right scientific people as well, but there is something called channels to the market, which goes to the market analysis. I think similarly, product design becomes very, very critical that finally your technology is only means to an end. It's consumed by people. And if you don't get the consumption experience right, you are done. Actually, at that point, they will give you, maybe if you are lucky, 15 minutes. People give you actually 2 minutes to say, yeah, I'm interested or I'm not interested. And then you're done after that. So I think as an engineer, we don't appreciate it as much coming out of grad school. But I think some people mature faster than others, but you will all mature and realize that those aspects are way more important than we give it credence to during grad school days. And I think that's the main thing I will say will be go to market analysis, brand permission, product and consumption are, I would almost say 80% of what actually makes money in the market. It's, of course, it's like technology is a table stakes. That's a given. If you don't have it, then you don't even start actually. But it's the other ones that make most difference. And you may even have a one level back technology. You will be successful because of the other ones. But if you have everything all together, including greatest of technology, you can be $1 trillion company. So.
Yeah, I guess let me add that, or like maybe make a comment to personal experience. I agree that like very much at the beginning of your career, like the technical parts, the depths of what you do matters more. And like as you do those type of like you get technically involved in project 1, 2, 3, it's important that you learn hands-on experience. When you have hands-on experience, you also learn about that market, that product. After like maybe like it's important that but then when you learn when you get involved in those technical projects, you use your like market analysis experience and knowledge in the future for your activities. Like maybe one example I can elaborate on this is when I started at Google, like I got myself involved in a number of large-scale graph analysis, network analysis projects. And there was like a big infrastructure called Pregel that was basically the method of choice, like we should have used it to do that. And like I learned after a couple of projects that this framework is not as reliable or as user-friendly or as scalable as like the need that we have at Google. So based on that knowledge, that market analysis, I learned that, oh, like this other team, these other like trust and safety teams, these like abuse detection teams, all need to do like this type of analysis, but they don't have the you know, the infrastructure. So then I embarked on the like a mission to build a system. It was like kind of a startup within Google to develop this. And like over time, understanding the market and so on became more and more important. So we developed some tools, and then we learned that, oh, like if we go as like a simpler way, but more scalable, easier to use, develop systems that don't need babysitting, like that all engineers can use, like we gain more and more. So as you move forward, yeah, like those become more important. But in any of those areas, if we didn't have the hands-on experience of understanding the back end of the system, our product impact would have been less and less. So you should always have some hands-on exposure to the systems as well. Otherwise, you can't like make the right decisions.
Thanks for the great suggestion and the answers. Yeah, due to a time limit, we want to cover more questions. Maybe we can move on to the second one. The second question is from Frank Shi. I think he or she, I think he is an undergrad just receiving, is going to have the bachelor degree. He's curious some of the questions on whether to go into the graduate school. So he's mentioned a couple of questions. For the first one is in the current and the future job market in the AI industry, will working experience be more than the education background, or vice versa? And he is also asking whether it's a postgraduate degree necessary for going the successful in being the industry for the position like a machine learning engineer. And he's also interested in whether it will be helpful for doing a PhD or thesis master, and is there any possible to come back to the school after doing some of the working experience?
I think maybe I can provide some insight here. And I think I see a question from Nasara as well that relates to this. So I think that like in academic background, like years of experience there or years of experience in industry, either one can be valuable. It's more a question of what you do during that time. Like if you do great work, that will serve you regardless of whether it's in academia or industry. In terms of the second question, is a postgraduate degree necessary to grow successfully? I had a master's degree from MIT, and empirically, I was able to be successful in industry research, like without a PhD. Like I had been promoted multiple times. I was a high-level research scientist leading a team before I started my PhD at Stanford. So it's not absolutely necessary. Will the research experience from a thesis-based master's or PhD bring positive assets? So on the other hand, my master's thesis from MIT absolutely helped me. Like the research team at Google that hired me was impressed with my master's thesis. And that's a big part of why they gave me a chance and kind of like rounded me up as someone who could do research. And then I kind of could bootstrap from there. I could publish articles in machine learning conferences. like learn from others and, grow into, someone that could do research. And then will it be difficult to pursue a postgraduate degree after working for years? I mean, empirically, I worked for 7-8 years after my master's from MIT, and then I started my PhD at Stanford like 4 years ago. So like, clearly it was fine. I actually think that my time in industry helped me. Like it grew me as a researcher. It allowed me to prove myself and have a publication record and like, build relationships with researchers and mentors.
Yeah, thanks for the great answering. Yeah, we have quite a few questions to add. The third one is coming. It's pretty technical, I guess. So Sheriff Dave says that the currently the most AI group research is more focused on the computation of metric engine, and but he is very interested in the new abstraction at the architecture compilation compilation co-design, including using machine learning in novel direction and ways. So what are some suggestions on joining some relevant research group where he can pursue research vector of his interests? I guess maybe Dr. Lai might be familiar with this topic.
Yeah, so I think in general, right, since ML is so transformative in the field, right, there's a lot of research interest in, how do we accelerate entire developments on every aspect, not just, computer architecture, not just accelerator design, but all the software tool chains, how do we do the compilation? It's in fact like ML compiler engineers is very, very hard to find in the market. Now, like we're just quite hard to find good ones, but just short of those. And then the other also using ML in a lot of different ways. I mean, in general, like it's a kind of like very in high demand area, but I kind of a little bit try to see what the question is in terms of like research groups, because I kind of like are you more referring to like industry research group or academia research group? Because I know that if you look at like a lot of places, I know that a lot of research groups, either in, for example, University of Washington, where a lot of have good ML research, ML compiler research from there, or if you can go to a lot of different sort of like industry conference, like TVM conference and other conferences, where you can also find a lot of people and participants there who are working on similar areas there.
I can just add a little bit to it as well. In terms of, if you look at the current monetization of AI and its massive implications it's having on society, there is one company which is printing money among all of it, and that's at the bottom of the stack. Doesn't matter who wins. I think they are certainly the very well positioned to, and that company happens to be at they're not I wouldn't call them a hardware company. Interestingly, I would call them a hardware software company. They're right at that intersection. And of course, long stories can be written on CUDA and its its lock and so on. I'm going to leave that aside, but I do believe it is an amazingly vibrant area to be at that intersection. And we are at the very beginning of the AI journey. This is a long journey which will transform societies and pretty much our society as we know it. And this is not the only compute we will end upon. So I firmly believe that is an amazingly exciting area to work upon. And it doesn't matter what, in the gold rush, there are one people that always make money. It's the people who provide shovels, actually. So it doesn't matter who finds the gold, they will certainly be printing money.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Very interesting. Thank you for the answering. So the next question is specific for Anna. So Nasala is asking about your special career path. It's saying like you are doing the research scientist before your PhD. So could you please share how to get into the research in the industry from your experience? And also he's curious of knowing the reason why you are doing the PhD right now after you have done really good job in the industrial research.
I think I got into some of my unusual career path already, but in terms of why I chose to do a PhD, for me, it was like an opportunity, a privilege to get to be a part of a cohort at Stanford, to get to have like some sort of balance here where I get to see the academic perspective at the same time as I see this industry research perspective. I get to meet like with my advisor, who's like just an absolutely brilliant scientist, like Chris Manning. I guess I just see like, why not? And let's say in the future I ever wanted to teach, like that's something that could become possible. Like, I guess I didn't see any downsides, but I saw a lot of upsides. And, I also saw another question about transitioning from ML for systems, despite being my main focus previously being on natural language processing. Should we remain in the same area or explore other fields? What steps can we take to prepare ourselves? I guess I feel like my manager at Google, Brain, was Dr. Kwok Lee. He's a brilliant person, made many major contributions to the field. He told me that machine learning is so transformative that it makes all of us into Renaissance men. It becomes possible to contribute in many seemingly disparate areas because these methods are so effective and so general. And I guess from my perspective, there's underlying structures between the problems in, say, like chip floor planning, where we're replacing graphs, versus like natural language processing, where we're predicting next words and there's structure among these words. So I guess seeing the commonalities between these fields can help you bring a unique edge to some new field that you join.
Yeah, thank you for your answering. So yeah, we have 1 minute left, but we have 2 questions. Maybe we can go through it very fast. So the first one, this one might be a little bit hard to answer. He's asking about the current situation of the layoffs. So so he is asking how long will it take for the tech hiring to improve and stabilize? Does any of you have any like insights?
I mean, we don't have the crystal ball for the economy, first of all, but my short answer is I do think that even this year, even the large companies are going to hire, and also, yeah, like maybe this year is a little bit more tricky, and like next year will be back to, if the economy does not collapse or something this year, and like that part is not known, I guess next year will be even better.
Just to add that one, like I know that it's probably on news that a lot of big companies are doing layoffs, but as Anna mentioned earlier, that there's also a lot of that. AI is a very active area. There's a lot of more staff companies still hiring and demanding a lot of talents, and just don't look at the top news lines, but actually look at that also there.
And another one very quickly, typically it took us maybe for a lot of actually tech companies who are hiring like crazy. I think those sins were done over 2 to 3 years. It typically takes you that much time to do repentance as well. Just keep that in mind. Of course, the first year will be the major chunk. And then, of course, it sort of stabilizes and then starts coming up. But it's a good measure, actually. How long did you do the sins and how long it's going to take to do the repentance, actually. Just roughly keep that in mind. It's probably a good indicator. Nobody has a crystal ball. If we did, we could be printing money too, actually. So.
Yeah, thank you for your great answering. So actually, we have passed our planned times, but we have one more question. So if the panelists are willing to stay for 1 more minute, maybe we can go through this one too. So yeah, this question is inspired by Anna's experience in transitioning to machine learning for system research at Google. Despite his main research focus at school is on the natural language processing. So the question is, should we remain in the same area or we should explore other fields in the career paths other than what you did in your PhD?
I think I did address this to some extent already, but I think that you shouldn't be afraid to try new areas if that's what's going to be impactful.
Okay.
Yeah, I would I would add, I just never be afraid to venture. Good idea. And I know you certainly are an exemplar of that, but it's everybody should have all kind of varied experience. There is only one life, so good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a very common point, like raised by the panelists. So I think that's all for today's panel. Professor Pan, do you want to have a final remark or something?
Sure. First of all, yeah, I would like to thank all the panelists and of course the two panelists, moderators have doing a really wonderful job, right? And I even myself have learned a lot, right? I hope the students also have learned a lot, right? Basically, you know, when you are young, right? So you really should follow your passion and don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? And also just also address the previous questions. Whatever you do in graduate school or even your PhD, don't define what you are doing in your next 30 years of a career, right? So I think no one, even many of us, right? So we probably don't do the same thing we do during our PhD, right? But I think the important thing is that you always being open-minded and teamwork and work with others. Yeah, we really thank all the panelists for being here on Saturday, and it's a really wonderful panel, and thank you so much. Yeah, really thanks.
One more thing, do you also are you okay to post the video on our Telos YouTube channel? Or anyone have any concern about that?
Seems good to me.
It's certainly fine on my end.
All right, I think we haven't touched any whatever sensitive, whatever or company confidential stuff, right? So I think should be fine. Yeah, I really enjoyed this panel, right? So thank you everyone again. Also thanks to the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you so much.